You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy with a little different twist this evening, because we have as our guest Michelle Sproat. Michelle's going to tell us a little bit about herself.
All right, well, my name is Michelle Sproat. I'm a sophomore at Niles West High School. I'm taking broadcast journalism right now, and I'm really interested in policy. I'm a part of policy debate, so I'm here to talk to you about those things.
So how long have you been hanging out around public affairs? For how many weeks you've been doing this?
I've been hanging around here for a couple of weeks.
And where's here?
Here in public affairs.
Comcast Skokie Studio?
Comcast Skokie Studio.
And you've been watching and observing, and you're learning how to interview?
And I'm hoping to volunteer here, too, in the future.
To volunteer?
Yes.
So you're going to get certified so you can actually touch the equipment, right?
Definitely.
Because you want to get a feel for the equipment.
Definitely.
But you've already, so you're going to bring the perspective of a somewhat younger generation. We don't usually have high school sophomores on this show. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
We're not blessed, usually.
Yeah, more kids my age need to know about this stuff, I feel.
You think?
Yes, I feel like teenagers are don't know enough about politics as they should. They don't know more about what's going on in the world.
Now, why not? I mean, do they talk about it in school? Do you have like a current events class?
I'm not sure if we have a current events class. I don't know of one. All we know about is history, what happened in the past, but not many teenagers really watch the news and know what's going on today, what's going to happen, what happened yesterday. Not a lot of kids read the newspaper. I do, personally, but not enough kids know about what's going on in the world.
So like February, we're in March now, it's March 11th. We're 9 days away from a primary election. What do you know about primaries?
I don't know a lot. That just goes to show.
Do you know there's something called a primary? You've probably heard that.
I've heard of it.
And there's a general election.
Yes.
And so in the primary, a lot of people don't pay attention because they view that sort of a party affair. Democratic Party, and Democrats decide who they want to represent them in the general election. Republicans decide who they want to represent them.
Yeah.
Communists, I don't know, they might decide. Probably not too many communists that you know of at Niles West, right? Do you know anybody who would say he or she's a communist?
I have not heard it.
All right, but there could be.
There could be.
They keep a low profile.
Yeah.
Probably. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the races coming up on the March 20 primary, and we're going to get the perspective from Michelle, right? So Michelle, what do you want to know about the primary coming up?
Well, I was hoping we could talk about like the presidential race with, Romney, Santorum, Gingrich, Paul, about what they are doing in the race right now.
Yeah, so I mean, for the presidential race, of course that's the Republican primary.
Yeah.
Democrats don't have much of a primary because nobody thinks they want to challenge Barack Obama, right? You're not going to do that. It's too late. Or you might. I mean, that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But you're probably a Democrat, right? Would you say you're a Democrat?
I'd say I
lean that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like I said, I'm only in high school. I still don't follow politics as much, which I'm hoping to in the future.
Yeah, well, you can't vote yet.
Yeah, I can't vote yet, so I really don't have too much of a say.
And how old do you have to be to vote?
18.
18. And it wasn't too long ago that you had to be 21. It might seem like a long time ago. You may not have even during your lifetime. I don't remember. Probably all the time that you've been growing up, even here, all you have to just be 18. But it's interesting because the primary is March 20 in Illinois, and usually the primary is, we had an earlier primary in 2008 because that was an accommodation to Barack Obama. Since he was running for president, the Democrats and the Republicans went out along with this. They moved the primary up to February. I think they did. It all sounds kind of odd to me now, but I think they did. In any case, the primary now is March 20th in Illinois. And usually that's too late. By that time, both parties have decided who their nominee is going to be. Now, last time they didn't, when Barack Obama was running and the Democratic primary was still going, although it was fairly clear he's got a good chance of being the nominee at that time. Now, in the Republicans, it's the same way this year, although usually everything's decided then. Because the Republican Party, unlike the Democratic Party, and you might learn this in school, if you go back historically, they're the party that says, we take the person who's next in line. Okay, so back in 1980, well, 1996, let's just go very quickly through some presidential races, going back to 76. Okay, you were born when?
96.
96, that gives us some perspective. 20 years before you were born, we sort of had a Republican primary race with Gerald Ford, who was the incumbent. He took over that position, became president when Richard Nixon resigned. You learned a little bit about Richard Nixon?
I've heard some things.
Republican who got in some trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. And he had to resign. And that happened in '76, right? So in '76, Ronald Reagan stepped up and he thought he'd take a run for president and was running against Gerald Ford. Ford was next in line, so he won, right? That's how Republicans do it. I mean, you sort of could do the same thing in high school. Do you have certain things like homecoming queen, king?
We have
they get to be
homecoming
sort of, does the person who didn't quite get it last time get to be the homecoming queen, or do you actually have a fresh contest?
Well, it's usually seniors that do it, so they graduate from the year before, so it's usually
so they don't get a
different.
second shot.
Yeah, no.
Well, in the Republican Party, so it was Gerald Ford's turn since he was the incumbent, so they made him the nominee. But then in 1980, when Reagan ran, he was next in line. So he had competition, but he became the Republican nominee for president. He won 2 terms. And then his vice president was George Herbert Walker Bush. So in 1988, he was next in line, and he became the nominee in '88.
Yeah.
See how that works?
Yeah.
And then in '92, since he was the incumbent, he got to run, and then he lost. And then '96, Bob Dole was next in line because he had been forever there. And Bob was a nice guy, and he was a war hero, but basically a man of little principle,
Okay.
little ideology.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
But he was a party faithful, and so he got to be the nominee. He got killed because he was a terrible candidate by Bill Clinton, who won his second term. And then in 2000, sort of like George W. Bush was next in line because he was the son of George Herbert Walker Bush. You notice how we do things like that? I mean, sort of like you've heard of Mayor Daley, right?
Yeah.
And you know his father was mayor for many years.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, for the last 55 years, we had a Daley in the chair of mayor in the city of Chicago. For the last 55 years, it's been like something like 43 of the 55. It's been a Daley. Okay, so we're getting slowly up to the current, right?
Yeah.
All right. So in 2000, W ran and won, beating Al Gore. Now, all along the way, the Democrats are always having primaries, and they're fighting each other. You know, they're doing it. The Democrats, they sort of believe in democracy, so they're Democrats with a big D, but also with a small d, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. We're almost getting to the current. And then in 2004, W wins re-election against John Kerry. And then in 2008, again, the Democrats, well, they were sort of getting almost to the Republican mode. It seemed like Hillary Clinton should have been next in line. Mm-hmm. Her husband had been president, she'd been first lady, she'd been a U.S. senator.
So she knew a little bit about, or a lot about.
Yeah, and so if a woman has still never been president, I don't know, just trying to remember, Geraldine Ferraro was a VP nominee and so forth. But I'm trying to remember, I guess we never had, and still have not had, a presidential candidate who was a woman. Mm-hmm. Am I right? Does that sound right to you? It's not a trick question, I just,
yeah,
okay.
No, that sounds right.
So Hillary thought she would be the first one, and she should have had it, and she didn't get it. Instead, Barack Obama, right? Mm-hmm. Who was like this upstart state senator.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're getting to the current. Okay.
Yeah.
That was
so
a long
the current
time.
presidential race.
Current presidential race. Who do we got in there?
Romney, Santorum, Gingrich, Paul.
Okay. And Romney, it sort of seems like it's his turn because he ran in 2000, in 2008, and he didn't get it. It was John McCain because it was John McCain's turn because he had run in 2000. You see, so it's easy if you don't look. If you're young and you haven't been following politics, and you want to understand things and you want to know who's likely to win, just ask for the Republicans who's next in line. It's like the kids at the water fountain. You know, who should get the next drink? Who's next in line? I mean, we don't usually push the person who's second in line and say, no, you don't get to get your drink of water, right? That wouldn't be fair.
No.
So that's the Republicans' attitude. So Mitt Romney will probably become the nominee. He will probably win in Illinois. Okay. But he is getting this challenge from Rick Santorum, former senator from Pennsylvania.
So it's like those two who are like in.
They're the main ones. There's this Newt Gingrich guy who was Speaker of the House. In fact, 2 years before you were born, we use that as a mental park, 1996. In 1994, the Republicans hadn't had the majority in the House of Representatives for about 50 years. Newt Gingrich led that revolution, and he helped the Republicans win the House, get a majority. You'd think that would be a good thing. You'd think he would get recognition for that. 4 years later, they got annoyed with him and they sort of dumped him. And he went into the wasteland and he went out and made a lot of money and He said he didn't lobby, but he did. Now he comes back. He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
So when they have these debates, and they've had 20 debates, Republican presidential debates, mostly Gingrich would be the guy who would be the guy who comes off smartest. But not always. And when it really counted a month or two ago, he did a terrible job.
Yeah.
So he's kind of out of it. And Ron Paul is not really a Republican. He's a libertarian. You know about libertarians?
No.
Basically, their philosophy is live and let live, right?
Okay.
I mean, it sounds good enough, right? Look, if somebody's not bothering you, would you want to bother them?
Probably not.
If they're not hurting you, just let them do what they want to do. So their philosophy is somebody wants to smoke marijuana and they're going to do it in their house and they're not going to bother anybody. Why do we want to have a law that says you can't smoke marijuana? You agree?
I do.
You think most of the kids your generation would agree with that?
Probably.
Do they smoke marijuana?
I don't think anyone specifically, but
You don't know anybody
probably.
who does, but probably.
Yes.
All right, we're not going to put you on the spot and ask
Yeah.
whether you do or not. But anyway, that's their philosophy. They might not say the same about some hardcore drugs, but things that you're not likely to flip out on.
Yeah.
You're not going to do some physical harm. Okay, so libertarians say, let people do what they want to do so long as they don't hurt anybody else. Try not to take their money because they earned it, right? Sound good to you?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you have toys that you earned
Yeah.
and you're a little kid, do you have to share your toys? I mean, they teach you when you're a little kid, you're supposed to share your toys. Good idea or bad idea?
It's a good idea.
Share your toys.
Yes.
You think even though it's your toys, your private property?
Yeah. Well, I had another question for you
All right.
too.
All right. So that's the presidential race.
Yeah.
Romney wins in Illinois.
Yeah.
The Republican primary.
Yeah.
The general election we'll come back to.
Okay.
That means if he wins in Illinois and if he goes to the national convention, which is in Tampa, late August, early September, somewhere around then, most likely he gets the majority of the delegates to vote for him. He becomes the nominee.
Yeah.
He then faces Barack Obama in the fall.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk to you about another thing. State Supreme Court. The State Supreme Court with Cunningham, Tice, Pachinski, Flanagan. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, it's an interesting race because, number one, the whole idea of voting for judges is a little peculiar. Because, on the federal level, the President of the United States appoints the district court judges, the appellate judges, and the Supreme Court judges sort of at the recommendation, at least on the district court level and somewhat on the appellate level, of the sitting U.S. Senator of the same party. Sometimes they look at the other party and they divide it up a little bit. But so appointed, not voted. We don't vote for judges on the federal level. In a number of states, they also appoint, but in Illinois, it's an elected position.
Yeah.
You think that's a sensible idea? A person who's going to be deciding legal matters?
Yeah.
You think we should elect them?
So who do you think out of those four will be elected for the state Supreme
Well,
Court?
it's tough to say. There's not a lot of polling that people are sharing. And Mary Jane Tice was appointed to the current slot in the Illinois Supreme Court when the prior justice resigned. They kind of do it in a genteel way. The prior justice was Justice Fitzgerald. And so the court says, who would you like to replace you? Now, they have the power to their 7 state Supreme Court justices to vote. They'll generally defer to the person who's resigning to get to pick a successor. It's sort of like next in line, but it was like you get to pick. So he picked Mary Jane Tice to replace him. So she was an appellate justice. She had appellate and circuit court positions, trial judge positions for 27 years. She's basically been a judge most of her life. She's in her 60s, okay? That's Mary Jane Tice.
Okay. So who do you think?
But wait,
Okay.
there's more. There's more.
There's more?
Wait, you ever see that, like those late night things when they say, you can get the Vegematic, but wait, there's more? We're going to throw in the Slice-O-Matic and the, Okay, so wait, not only do you have Mary Jane Tice running, okay, and often that's all there is, because often people say, oh, okay, Tice is kind of the chosen, the favored, we're not going to rock the boat. It's kind of like the old Soviet Union. There'd be one position, they said they had democracy, you'd have one position on the ballot and one person. And 99% of the people would vote for that one person.
Yeah.
And I sort of like the rumor out there, or I would say reliable sources tell me that when Joyce Cunningham, who's an appellate justice, happens to be African American, decided she would run against Mary Jane Tice, Mary Jane Tice said, what are you doing? Why are you running? Don't you understand? I'm the incumbent. I've sort of been appointed to this position. And why don't you wait until somebody appoints you. Like Justice Freeman, who just happens to be African American. You're African American, maybe you should wait till he does. So my reliable sources tell me that Justice Cunningham didn't like the idea so much. She thought that was kind of condescending, that she didn't, this is America.
Yeah.
It's an election. So Justice Cunningham's running, and she's African American. It's expected that she will do well in the African American community, maybe in other areas. And Aurelia Paczynski. She's interesting because a lot of people call her Ori. And she's been a politician much of her life, holding elected office. She was elected circuit court clerk of Cook County. A lot of people don't know what that is, but they know that name, Paczynski.
Yeah.
And her father was a congressman from, I don't know, in the 50s and into the early 60s. I think 48 to 62, something like that. So even though that was a long time ago, you ever heard the name Paczynski?
I've heard of it.
It sounds like a Chicago name, okay? So you get name recognition. So when people go to the ballot and they're voting for judge and they've never heard of these people,
they'll notice that name.
Paczynski. And a lot of times people vote for the person they know. So Paczynski's thought to be favored now, except Mary Jane Tice is raising more money because Mayor Rahm Emanuel, you know who he is, right? He's the honcho in Chicago. He's supporting her. Some say telling people who do business with the city they want to continue to do business, they should donate to Tice. So Emanuel's supporting Tice. African community, American community should be lining up with Cunningham, and Paczynski's just got this big name recognition. So one of those three women should win. There's a guy by the name of Tom Flanagan, but all he's got is a nice sounding Irish name.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the 10th congressional race.
10th congressional race, okay.
Yes.
That's an area, we tape in Skokie. You live in Skokie, right? If you go a little bit north of there, well, you have to go further north because of redistricting. We used to say you just go to Wilmette or Kenilworth, all of that district, Wilmette and Kenilworth, those areas, and Winnetka have now been moved into the 9th. These are a lot of Republicans, not all, who now find Jan Schakowsky, who's kind of to the left of Chairman Mao. Well, I'm being a little facetious. We like Jan Schakowsky. You know her. She's your congresswoman, right?
I believe so.
Have you ever seen her?
I've heard of her. In parades on the 4th of July, they're passing out little signs.
She would be there?
I think so.
And she used to come to this show. Not so much anymore. We'd like her to come back. Anyway, but if you go north of there, if you go into Glencoe and Highland Park, you're now into the 10th Congressional District, going to Waukegan and Libertyville. That's all the 10th. And Bob Dole is the current, he's a Republican. The Republicans have held that seat for 31 years. But the Democrats, they did what's legal, but they got the power to redistrict. Okay, and so they made the 10th even more Democratic. It was Democratic to begin with, even though Republicans have been getting elected. So it should go to the Democrats, and there are 4 Democrats lining up for that, right?
Tree, Schneider, Shaman, and Bavda.
And Bavda, yeah,
Yes,
Vivek Bavda. So very good. You're on top of this stuff. So I mean, you're telling me you don't know it, and you know all these folks here in this race. You got all this out of Niles West is to be complimented. They're teaching you stuff, right? Okay. Right, seriously, okay?
Yeah.
Or you're learning it in this broadcast, you take that broadcast journalism class?
Yes.
How many years have you been taking that?
I've been taking it only for this year, only a
This is
couple
your
months
first year?
now. Yes.
But you're a sophomore?
Yes.
You're planning to take it 2 more years? You can keep
I
taking
believe
it
so.
every semester?
Yes.
All right, so you're sort of like going to be better than Katie Couric? You know Katie Couric?
No.
She was one of the first women to really, I think, to become the nightly anchor on broadcast shows 2, 5, and 7. Barbara Williams was there a long time ago, but she didn't last very long. Katie lasted longer.
Yeah.
So Katie's like major woman, female, major woman accomplishment. All right. So Katie Couric. She was mentioned in Game Change, a movie that just came out, important book about the 2008 election. Katie Couric gave a really tough interview to Sarah Palin. You know who Sarah Palin is?
Yes.
She was?
The president. She ran
for vice president
with John McCain.
Republican.
Republican,
okay.
and
yeah.
she was going to work with.
And Katie Couric interviewed her, and she sort of gave a Berkowitz kind of interview, a really tough interview. But some would say not so tough. It was just that Sarah Palin didn't know her stuff. In any case, so I don't know how we got onto Katie Couric, and we were talking about the 10th, right?
Yeah, 10th congressional race.
All right, so the 10th congressional district race. Who's going to win there?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say. If you had to say, Brad Schneider's got a lot of endorsements, and he's 45-ish or so, and he's got a family, so he kind of looks like a congressman.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd. You'd think people would vote on, like, position on war, position on taxes, position on the economy, jobs. It turns out in the primaries, the candidates are also similar because
Yeah.
they're all Democrats or all Republicans, one or the other. People tend to vote like who looks like a congressman. Elias Shaman, for instance, is about 25. So that may sound old to you, but young to most people. He kind of looks, some would say 28 maybe, but still, he's not married, he doesn't have kids.
Yeah,
Do we
still
want
young.
a person like that representing us?
Possibly.
Possibly, you think?
Possibly.
And Ilya hopes you're right, because then he'd win. But he's got that disadvantage. On the other hand, he's got a lot of grassroots supports. He worked for MoveOn.org. Governor Howard Dean came out and supported him. A lot of the grassroots Democrats, as Howard Dean would put it, the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party support him. It's a little joke. You're supposed to laugh. Okay. Democratic wing, because it was a joke, because people would say, they used to say the left wing, this thing.
Yeah.
But the radicals, they would try to say, were the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
All right.
So, can we also talk about?
Oh, so Shaman's there, got a shot. Schneider's got a shot. John Tree, military background, which is unusual for Democrats running. He's 22 years in the Air Force, active and reserve duty. Vivek Bhavda's got less of an organization.
Yeah.
So if you had to say, it's probably between Schneider and Shaman.
Okay.
Although Tree's
That's
got a
for
shot.
the 10th congressional race.
That's in the 10th.
Okay,
And of course, the winner will face Bob Dole, who's
Yeah.
the current Republican incumbent.
Yeah.
And Dole is not being challenged in his primary.
Yeah. So how about the 2nd congressional race
That's really interesting.
with
race.
Jesse Jackson and Halverson, who I believe he's running again, or is
Right.
in that with?
That's interesting because Jesse Jackson, Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., son of the famous Reverend Jackson, has been there for a long time. He came in a special election in 1995, pretty much not challenged. Once you win and there is a Democratic primary, it's a very Democratic district, you never had to worry about losing to the Republicans, never had a challenge. But this time around, Debbie Halverson, who was a congressman for 2 years, and then she had lost her race and to Adam Kinzinger, which we'll see in a minute comes up again. So they redistricted in 2010. She thought she'd have a chance. She had been in the 11th congressional district when she held that position. She thought with the new redistricting in the 2nd, she'd have a chance. Jackson's black, she's white, so there's somewhat of that black-white thing. The district is now more white, still more black than white, but more white than it had been. People say the big money goes with Jesse Jackson, but Halverson's got a shot.
Okay, that makes sense. And how about the 8th congressional race? The two people in that.
That's a tough race because it's a Democratic primary, and that was designed for Tammy Duckworth. It's kind of, and I think Tammy'd almost agree. Tammy was here, and so was her opponent, Rajana Krishnamurthy. So we like them both. We're easy. If people will come on the show, Democrat or Republican, we like it, okay?
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to please me. Just come on the show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like you're here,
I'm
and
here.
so we like it.
All right.
All right.
That's
And
good to hear.
It's easy. You know, if we can get some more students to come here from Niles, Niles West, right? You think you could arrange that?
If more people would become more interested in these kind of topics, then sure.
And they come, and then
people
you
would come
can
here.
interview them, okay?
Okay.
So you're on your way. You're going to register for a class here, right? For Comcast Skokie Studio. You're going to get to take that class, right?
Yep.
And when you do that, you'll become certified, right? And then you'll become the producer.
Okay.
And you can then have people on your show.
All right.
You can be sort of a mini Jeff Berkowitz.
A mini Jeff Berkowitz.
Yeah, I don't know if that sounded right, but anyway, yeah, it's hard to imagine Jeff being mini about anything, but no, but seriously, that's the path you're on. And so this is, this can be sort of a promo for people who want to volunteer for our show. First thing they have to do is come to Comcast, take the class, get certified. Get certified, they can do their own show, or they can work on my show,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Sound fair?
Sounds very fair.
All right, and Comcast does that, and they don't charge for the class, right?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
6 nights a week, you can do it, piece of cake.
Yep.
And then what are you going to do? What kind of show would you run when you have your own show?
I don't know what kind of show I'd run if I had my own show. That's a very good question.
We're going to think about
We're going
that.
to think about that.
We'll tell the viewers next time you come back and
Next
do the
time.
show.
Okay.
All right, so we're on the 10th. We're on the 10th or we're at the 10th?
We're on the 8th.
We're on the 8th. Rajana Krishnamurthy, Indian American, lost a close race for comptroller to David Lee Miller in 2010. He's raised a lot of money. Tammy Duckworth has raised a lot of money. She lost a close race when she ran for Congress in the 6th Congressional District to Peter Roskam. See, he's not been on the show lately, so I almost forgot his name. In any case, the Democrats took a lot of those voters in the 6th Congressional District. They moved them into the 8th. Tammy's in the 8th. She lives in the 8th. And now these are natural voters for her. But Rajneesh is doing pretty well, too. People think Tammy's the favorite, but Rajneesh is putting up a good showing, and he could win.
And that's for the 8th, correct?
And that's for the 8th.
All right,
and the winner faces Joe Walsh, who's the current incumbent, who upset Congresswoman Melissa Bean, who had like $4 million, and Joe had about $4 in the election. He's the Republican, upset the Democrat. He's ready to take on whoever wins on the Democratic side in the fall.
So 8th congressional race. Now how about the 16th?
That's another interesting race because Don Manzullo is the sitting congressman there, and that's sort of in Rockford and I think Belvedere and around there. Way out the land, I don't know, where is the land beyond O'Hare, the land, who knows? Does anybody know where Rockford is? I mean, I've been there and I don't know where Rockford is. Yeah, but do you know where it is? It's like way west, right?
It's around here.
Okay, and it goes, that district goes south all over. It's like, but a lot of that district doesn't have people, it just has rocks. You know, so you got to keep extending it until you find enough people to fill up the district, okay? In any case, so that's that 16th. Manzullo's been a congressman there for a long, long time. He's being challenged by Adam Kinzinger, who was redistricted out of sort of his seat. He's a sitting congressman. So 2 sitting congressmen, Republicans running against each other, both fairly conservative. Manzullo says, vote for him. He says, because he's more conservative than Kinzinger, who's also conservative. The smart money says Kinzinger pulls up an upset here. He's young, he's spirited, he's probably got Tea Party support, but Manzullo's could eke out a win.
Okay.
And so I think, what else? Is that it? Have we covered it all?
I think we've covered all of it, covered all the bases.
So if you sort of think back, if you're young and you're thinking about what we said, any questions?
Not really, I think I've
But the big issue, you know, here's an interesting and somewhat controversial, because the big issue that's come up, people say it's jobs, jobs, jobs. That's the issue for both the Democrats and Republicans to talk about. And yet this other issue came up that dealt with, we got it here, I think. Let's see if we got it, because you don't leave home without it, your Constitution. The First Amendment says, you know, has a clause that says, Congress shall make no law abridging free speech or establishing religion or abridging the right to exercise your choices on religion. And Obamacare came out with a ruling that says the Catholic Church or church entities, they wouldn't have to provide contraceptives, but if they have a hospital that's a Catholic religion affiliate, they would have to offer contraceptives to their employees. And yet the Catholic Church says although contraceptives are not too controversial these days, it still is a part of the Catholic dogma, Catholic teaching, that people should not use contraceptives. So what do you think? Is the federal government violating this document, the U.S. Constitution, by telling these Catholic-affiliated hospitals and other institutions that they have to offer something that is against their teaching? Which is free contraceptives for women.
You know, I don't know. That's
tough question.
That's a tough question.
Well, we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Michelle Sproat. Got that right?
Yeah,
Sproat. Sophomore at Niles West High School, who's really, I mean, I think you've done a great job of demonstrating.
Thank you.
You know politics. You know public policy.
I'd like to know more, though.
And so you're going to keep coming back? You learn it on public affairs, right? Because you've been coming a few weeks now, right?
Yes.
Have you learned a few things?
I've learned many things.
I think 2 weeks ago, was it Joyce Cunningham who was here? Or was it, who was here? Maybe it was Ty Fainer?
Yeah, Ty Fainer.
Former Illinois Attorney General. Ty was an interesting guy. He still is an interesting guy. All right. And you got to see Julie Hamos this week when we taped that show, right?
Yep.
She's a former state rep. She's now head of the Illinois Department of Health Care and Family Services. She was talking about some of the same things we were talking about.